Hello and welcome to Temple of Akasha, the home of embodied spirituality with me, Natasha. So I'm filming this just after the really intense eclipse portal has kind of closed out. We're in eclipse season energy for the next 6 months anyway, but this was the kind of window that we were experiencing the change, the transformation really, really potently. I honestly feel like I've lived 15 lives in the last 2 weeks. I'm laughing, but I've cried so much. I've cried so much in the last 2 weeks. It's been insane. But this eclipse has really inspired today's message, because it's like a kind of hyperchamber of growth, these eclipse portals. And ultimately, any time of intense challenge, of intense polarization, of intense contrast is happening to provide us with clarity. And that is the core message for today's video. The contrast we experience provides clarity. So when we are going through life and we are experiencing contrast, i.e. things that feel really uncomfortable, fear, anger, grief, sudden change, instability, the disillusion of, relationships, living situations, structures at the collective level, whenever we're moving through intense periods of potentially dissonance or disharmony, that contrast is actually acting as almost like a benchmark for us to be able to measure truth against. And this has been a big message coming up, especially in the last couple of weeks, around truth, that we are being refined so that we can become channels of truth. The only way we can know what truth feels like in our embodied experience is to actually be able to sample the frequency of that which is not true. So we actually have to then be in situations and experiences that don't feel like truth, so we have a better and more embodied understanding of what truth feels like. And then once we know truth in our bodies, we can use that to orientate ourselves, right? Because once we know truth, we know that maybe truth in our bodies feels like peace, feels like expansiveness. If we're in situations that don't feel that way in our bodies, we know that on some level we're not aligning with truth in that moment. There may be something arising that is obscuring that truth that we need to move through so we can return to it. So that has been the big message coming through in the wake of this eclipse. Really, that we're being asked to become really masterful, masters of energy, especially as our consciousness upgrades and our light bodies are activated. The multidimensionality of who we are is starting to become online more and more, or starting to come online more and more. And so what's happening is we are moving away from just being completely identified with the dense 3D reality to actually being able to sample and live from the energetic realms first. And so in order to be able to really navigate this new this upgraded operating system even, we have to get really attuned to the subtle realm of energy, because it's not obvious like the 3D world, right? It's not like a traffic light, like red, orange, green. We don't have the same tangible markers for us to know which way is truth, which way feels right. We have to feel it. And especially because we've been so mind dominated for the last couple of thousand years, especially, this is going to feel really alien, this switch. But we are being asked during this time of transformation, as we move from the 3D to the 5D, when we move from complete identification with the ego and physicality to a more unconditional, heart-led way of being, we are being asked to integrate the energetic into the human, and we need to become attuned to the energetic realms in order for us to be able to embody our truth as ultimately non-physical, energetic beings first that have chosen to come into a physical experience. So if you are finding that there is lots of contrast in your human experience at the moment, that is a surefire way of the universe telling you that you are being asked to become more masterful and discerning with regards to what truth means and feels like to you. It's a blessing. It's a blessing. Because once you are able to feel into what real truth is for you at the level of your soul, you won't be able to be fooled by mistruth. And so what I've almost been experiencing is these different textures and layers of truth. When we are attuned to energy, something that is just not right for us, maybe it's an old relationship, let's use that as an example. When it's there's an old relationship, maybe we've got a lot of history there was a lot of shared experience there, that maybe at one point there was a lot of magnetism and love there. If we're holding on to the idea of the relationship, if we're attached to the person from the human level, but the soul is saying it's time to move on, there will be a texture to that relationship that doesn't feel satisfactory anymore, that may even feel slightly repulsive or may feel dissonant and unharmonious in our systems. Now, we have free will choice, so we can override that, of course. We can just continue to feed that dynamic. But the more attuned to truth you become, the more soul-embodied you become, the more soul-led you live, you are not going to be able to tolerate aligning with mistruth. It's actually going to become intolerant to your system. And so you could continue to exercise free will choice and just, really just bypass your innate wisdom, bypass what your soul and heart is telling you. But actually it's going to get to a point when you are choosing to live soul-led, where that vibrational disharmony is so tangible in your field that you're going to just have to, there's no other choice. You have to leave the relationship. You may not know what's coming next, but you have to leave. You know that that's the only choice. Whereas, as we move up the scale and there are other textures of truth, we are being refined to understand what our innate truth feels like versus maybe what is a higher egoic truth. So say we're in the dead relationship and that just doesn't feel right. Maybe something that feels slightly more true might be, I don't know, moving countries because you need change. And that might feel a little bit more tantalizing to you. But again, we're being asked to not just settle for any old truth, but to actually become refined enough in our consciousness where we can align with soul truth, the highest truth available to us. And I'm not saying this to encourage you to try and be a perfectionist in your life. It's just, the divine is asking us to become really highly attuned masters of energy. And so you could think of this like a game. You're being given multiple options in your life. You've got multiple avenues you can go down. You could leave the dead relationship. You could move to another country. Or what is the highest truth being asked of you in this moment? Are either of those things the highest truth? Maybe the highest truth is actually that you do need to end the relationship, but you need to stay where you are to deal with your earthly conditions accordingly, right? To take responsibility for your 3D life. So that from that place you can move, if you need to move, from an empowered state, not from a reactive state of pain and of avoidance and of dismissal and of, denying the fact that this has been difficult. So really, when we're aligning with truth, we're aligning with love, unconditional love. To me, they're synonymous. The unconditional love of the divine equals truth. And so when we are being exposed to a lot of contrast in our 3D reality, really, we're just being shown all the different ways in which we experience everything that is not unconditional love. The many different forms fear can take, and fear can often masquerade as love. So we're being asked to become really intuitive and discerning about that. So really in these kinds of conversations, when we're talking about energetic attunement and aligning with truth, we're asking, what is the most loving thing to do in this situation? What would love do? It's like not what my ego and egoic desires want, not what feels like it won't hurt another person and potentially cause conflict. Like, no, what is the highest truth available? What is the most loving thing for me to do in this moment? And it's remembering that sometimes the most loving thing to do is not the thing that's going to be suffering free. Sometimes choosing the most loving course is going to be the path that causes temporary disruption, disharmony, dissonance, especially if change is needed. That's not a bad thing. It's just navigating that fragile territory with a bit of compassion and gentleness for yourself and whoever else is involved. Really what this ascension path is asking of us, this refinement process is asking of us, is to continue to come back to the truth of who we are, which is embodied beings of unconditional love. And therefore we're being asked to return to ultimate truth in every aspect of our lives. And the more we embody the light of truth and the light of love, the more stark everything that is not love becomes in our lives. It's like, whoa, all of a sudden I can see, feel, experience the texture of everything that is not light and love, because I'm becoming an embodied instrument of that more and more and more in my life. And that can be challenging sometimes, because it means you can't really hide from yourself anymore. You know, it's like once you start embodying and embracing love and truth as your true north, and you make that your place of orientation, you're like, shit, oh, I can't keep doing that thing anymore. I can't keep talking to that person anymore. I can't keep working that job anymore because it's not truth anymore. And the other thing I'd like to add to this before I close up is just recognizing that this process requires your moment-to-moment presence, because truth is constantly adapting, evolving, changing according to each and every moment. We're on an evolutionary journey. That is a moment-to-moment process. So what was true for you 6 months ago, even 3 months ago, a week ago, may no longer be truth for you anymore. And this is why your moment-to-moment presence and commitment to this process is required. It's like we're being asked to become fluid embodiments of just this ever-unfolding evolutionary process of consciousness experiencing itself through us. It's a constant process. We're being asked to kind of become more tuned into and tapped into and turned on in our feminine embodiment, our feminine energetic embodiment. So yeah, I'm going to close this out. This is only a short transmission, just while I'm really sitting with, in my own experience at the moment, this dance of contrast, and how ultimately that contrast allows us to come back into clarity, into truth, back to love. So I invite you to embrace with curiosity any contrast you're experiencing in your life right now. That might be, you know, physical illness or dis-ease. That might be relationship dissonance. That might be feeling really unmotivated, uninspired by your work. Wherever you're noticing something in your experience that is, you know, presenting you with contrast, with challenge, with maybe with resistance. It's like lovingly just, okay, it's here. And what's its message for you? If that isn't truth for you, can you use that as a benchmark to sense into what would feel more true? That's the invitation. So I hope you guys are keeping well. I hope you're staying sane in these crazy energies. And as always, I'm so grateful to have you here. It'd be super amazing if you would like to subscribe to the channel and you're not already subscribed. Liking and sharing always helps with the algorithm, with my videos. So I hope you're taking really good care of yourself, and I look forward to connecting with you again really soon.